Today I show you how to create those buttons in HTML and CSS. First of all, we need to go into HTML and create a button. And inside of this button, we could say that the text is, for example, GitHub to link our GitHub repository. Now let's go into CSS and target our button. Give our button a padding of 20 pixels on the y-axis and of 40 pixels on the x-axis. Now we have this button. Now we can say that we want to have a background color that is the same background color we've used for our body. So we give RGB 28, 28, 28, and we say that we want to have a border of 0 pixels. Now we want to have a text color of white, maybe a font family of monospace, and a letter spacing to give our letters some more spacing of maybe 0.5 characters. We're gonna save this, we'll increase the font size to 16 pixels, and now we have this effect basically. Now it's time for our border, or our animated border if you want to say so, and we can create our animated border first by giving our button a position of relative, and now using the button : after pseudo elements to create something after our button, and it'll be empty content. We'll set our position to absolute, so it's positioned absolute to our button element, so basically relative to our button element. And now we'll say we want to have an inset of 3 pixels, for example. And now we want to have a background color, or a background, let's just say background of yellow, for example. And as you can see, we now have this yellow background, and once we put our after element behind our button by using set index of -1, you will see that you can't see anything because we need to put -3 right here. And now we have this inset of -3 pixels, and we see it basically as a border. While it's not really a border, it's basically just a background that is slightly bigger than our button. But since we pushed our button behind our after element, behind our button, it looks like a background, like a border basically. So let me remove the set index to really show you. So we basically have this yellow rectangle, and right now it's in front of our button, but once we use set index -1 to push it behind our button, it gets pushed behind our button and looks like a border. So let's just use -1 pixel because I think this looks a little bit better. And for the background, let's use a conic gradient, like so. And now inside of this gradient, we can, for example, say, okay, we want to have a gradient that goes from this to this to this to this. Let's do it. And now we can obviously change the colors right here by saying that we want to use yellow, for example, for the starting point. And now we have this border effect, if you want to say so. Now we could obviously use some more background colors like this. And as you can see, by changing between background color and regular color, you get this effect where it looks like it is a border that stops and starts from time to time. So if we would like use red here, for example, it would look as if we would have a yellow border, then we don't have a border from time to time, even though we have somehow a border that is just the border color of our background. And now we have a red border again, and now we can copy this once again if we want to do so and paste this here, and we could go for a blue border for the last element, for example. And now we have this effect basically. But now we obviously need to animate our background, and we can do so by using the from var --angle variable to animate our angle basically. And now we see our border basically disappear, but we can change that by creating a property inside of CSS and saying that we want to create the property angle. And inside of this property, we want to create the syntax, and we say our syntax is our angle. Our initial value for the angle property is obviously 0 degrees because we want to start at 0 to 360 degrees. And for inherits, we want to say false. So now we basically have this property angle, and now we can use this property angle to animate our border. And we can do so by creating an animation by using add keyframes. We have an identifier that could be rotate, for example, and we want to start from an angle of 0 degrees and we want to go to an angle of 360 degrees. And now we basically say we want to start from 0 degrees to 360 degrees, and we have this animation rotate. And now if we use this animation rotate, right here we animate the angle, and the angle basically changes the way our gradient looks, if this makes sense. So now we can use animation. We can say we want to have the animation rotate, duration of 4 seconds, timing function should be linear, delay should be 0, and iteration count should be infinite. Directional fill mode don't matter. And now we basically have this animation. But we can make this even a little bit cooler by copying this code and pasting this code once again. And now we can use the before pseudo element. And we can say that we want to use a filter property to create a little blur or shadow, if you want to say so. So basically a neon effect. And now we use filter blur of, let's say 10 pixels, which is a lot. We won't look that good, but you can take a look at it. And as you can see, we now have this blur. And if you want to use that, feel free to do that. But I really prefer if we have a subtle blur of maybe 3 pixels. And we maybe need to reload our site because now it's not really synced. And now we have a synced border and a synced blur, if you want to say so. And this is how you can create this effect. Obviously, you can use different blur strengths and adjust them according to what you really like. But yeah, this is basically how it works. And I really hope you enjoyed this button effect. And yeah, see you.